Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's book, Pakistan or the Partition of India, is a very important book. Published in 1940, this book deeply explains the social and political conditions of India before independence. It analyzes the reasons that led to the partition of India. Dr. Ambedkar, a legal scholar, social reformer, and the architect of the Indian Constitution, reveals his deep understanding of the complexities of that time. He analyzes the relationship between the Hindu and Muslim communities. He examines the rise of communal tensions. This book serves as a historical document. It reflects the anxieties and aspirations of a nation standing on the cusp of independence. Dr. Ambedkar's writing shows clarity, logic, and an unwavering commitment to social justice. His words are still relevant today. They offer valuable lessons for understanding the challenges that continue to shape India today. With its historical significance and intellectual depth, Pakistan or the Partition of India is an important book. It is essential reading for anyone who wants to understand the complexities of India's past and present. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar was a great figure in Indian history. Born into a Hindu family, he faced serious social discrimination throughout his life. This discrimination strengthened his fight for social justice and equality. Dr. Ambedkar's intelligence was exceptional. He earned doctorates in economics and law from prestigious universities like Columbia University and the University of London. He was a scholarly writer. His writings covered many subjects, including law, economics, politics, and sociology. Dr. Ambedkar played a key role in shaping modern India. His biggest contribution was as the chairman of the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution. The Constitution, adopted in 1950, laid the foundation for a democratic and egalitarian India. It includes the principles of justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Dr. Ambedkar's vision went beyond the legal framework. He believed in empowering marginalized communities. He supported the rights of Dalits, women, and other oppressed classes of society. The first version of Pakistan, or the Partition of India, was a very different book. Its original title was Thoughts on Pakistan. This title focused more on the growing demand for a separate Muslim state. In this early manuscript, Dr. Ambedkar studied the historical and socio-political factors that fueled the demand for Pakistan. He explored the arguments made for a separate nation by the leaders of the Muslim League, especially Muhammad Ali Jinnah. This first version likely analyzed the two-nation theory. This theory, championed by the Muslim League, stated that Hindus and Muslims were two separate nations. They were incompatible in their social customs, religious beliefs, and cultural practices. With his characteristic thoroughness, Dr. Ambedkar would have examined these claims. He always sought to unravel the complexities of Hindu-Muslim relations in pre-independence India. Dr. Ambedkar's early work likely presented a critical analysis of the potential consequences of partition. He foresaw the immense human suffering, displacement, and violence that would inevitably accompany the division of the Indian subcontinent. His deep understanding of Indian society and his commitment to its unity made him wary of any solution that involved fragmentation along religious lines. However, Dr. Ambedkar took the bold step of rejecting his own manuscript. He decided against publishing this first version. This decision shows his intellectual honesty and his willingness to adapt his views to changing circumstances. The exact reasons for his rejection are clearly documented in the book's preface. It's possible that Dr. Ambedkar felt a more comprehensive analysis of the situation was needed. He believed that the issue of partition wasn't just a Hindu-Muslim issue. It was deeply connected to broader social, political, and economic factors. He wanted to expand the scope of his work. He wanted to explore these complexities in greater detail. Additionally, Dr. Ambedkar was a strong advocate for a united India. He believed that the creation of Pakistan wouldn't solve the problems faced by Hindus or Muslims. He argued that it would only deepen existing divisions and create new conflicts. He felt his initial work, which focused on Pakistan, could be misinterpreted as endorsing the idea of partition. This was a notion he strongly opposed. Dr. Ambedkar's decision to reject the first edition highlights his intellectual honesty. He wasn't afraid to change his mind or refine his arguments. He constantly sought a deeper understanding of the issues. His aim was always to present a balanced and reasoned perspective. Dr. Ambedkar had strong opinions about Hindu extremist groups and the Hindu Mahasabha. He viewed their religious nationalism with deep suspicion and concern. In Pakistan, or the Partition of India, he criticizes their role in increasing communal tensions. He believed their actions were harmful to India's unity and progress. He considered their ideology narrow, divisive, and ultimately detrimental to the fabric of Indian society. Ambedkar argued that these groups represented the interests of a select few within Hinduism, primarily the upper castes. He felt they did not speak for the vast majority of Hindus, especially the lower castes, who had long been marginalized and oppressed within the Hindu social hierarchy. He criticized their emphasis on Hindu identity as the basis of nationality. He believed it excluded and alienated Muslims and other religious minorities. This further exacerbated existing communal divisions. Dr. Ambedkar's critique of Hindu nationalism stemmed from his unwavering commitment to social justice and equality. He believed that the ideologies espoused by these groups would only perpetuate existing inequalities and discrimination within Indian society. He believed that true unity could only be achieved through a shared sense of citizenship and equal rights for all, regardless of religious affiliation. At the heart of Dr. Ambedkar's criticism of the Hindu extremists and the Hindu Mahasabha was their focus on maintaining upper caste dominance. He argued that these groups were essentially tools to maintain the dominance of the upper castes over the rest of Hindu society, especially the Dalits, Adivasis, and backward classes, who had long been relegated to the bottom rung of the caste system. In Dr. Ambedkar's view, their vision of a Hindu nation was synonymous with the continuation of caste-based discrimination and oppression. Dr. Ambedkar believed that the Hindu Mahasabha's emphasis on Hindu unity was hollow in the face of the deep inequalities perpetuated by the caste system. He argued that true unity could not be achieved without addressing the fundamental issue of caste. He saw the Hindu Mahasabha's silence on caste reform as evidence of their true agenda, maintaining upper caste privilege. He pointed to the hypocrisy of advocating for a unified Hindu society while simultaneously upholding a system that inherently divided Hindus along caste lines. He argued that their nationalism wasn't about genuine unity, but about consolidating the power and influence of a privileged few at the expense of the marginalized many. Dr. Ambedkar also highlighted the contradictions and conflicts within the Hindu nationalist movement itself. He pointed out that while these groups projected an image of Hindu unity, they were often plagued by internal disagreements and power struggles. This further strengthened his argument that their version of Hindu unity was superficial and unstable. He observed that the Hindu Mahasabha and other such organizations were not monolithic entities. They were composed of different factions with varying interpretations of Hindu nationalism and competing visions for India's future. These internal divisions often spilled out into the open, undermining their claims of representing a unified Hindu voice. Ambedkar believed that these internal struggles exposed inherent flaws within their ideology. He argued that an ideology that couldn't even unite its own followers could hardly be expected to unite a diverse and complex nation like India. Recognizing Muslim unity, a contrast to caste. Dr. Ambedkar's analysis of Indian society went beyond just criticizing Hindu nationalism. He also made practical observations about the Muslim community in pre-independence India. One aspect that particularly caught his attention was the sense of unity among Muslims. He saw this unity as a stark contrast to the deep divisions imposed by the caste system within Hinduism. He often pointed to this difference to highlight the flaws of the Hindu social order. Dr. Ambedkar recognized that Muslims, despite their internal diversity in terms of language, culture, and social practices, displayed a strong sense of religious unity. He argued that this unity stemmed from the egalitarian principles embedded in Islam. He believed that these values transcended social hierarchy and fostered a sense of brotherhood and solidarity among Muslims. This observation resonated deeply with Dr. Ambedkar's own experiences with the caste system. He had witnessed firsthand the divisive and discriminatory nature of caste. He argued that the caste system had fragmented Hindu society. It had created deep chasms between different groups, hindering social progress and national unity. Dr. Ambedkar's admiration for Muslim unity wasn't about elevating one community over another. It was about highlighting an aspect of Muslim social life that he believed held valuable lessons for all of India. He argued that true national unity could only be achieved by fostering a sense of equality and brotherhood among all citizens, regardless of their religious or caste background. Shared aspirations, Muslims, and the fight for a just India. Moreover, Dr. Ambedkar believed that, like many other marginalized communities in India, Muslims also yearned for a just and equitable society. He viewed their demands for political representation and safeguards for their rights not as separatist tendencies, but as legitimate aspirations for equality and justice within the framework of a shared nation. He acknowledged the contributions of Muslim leaders and intellectuals to the Indian nationalist movement. He recognized that many Muslims were actively involved in the struggle against British colonialism. They shared the dream of a free and independent India. Dr. Ambedkar believed that a truly united and progressive India must accommodate the aspirations of all its citizens, including Muslims. Dr. Ambedkar's understanding of the Muslim community was nuanced and multi-layered. He didn't view them through a simplified us versus them lens. He recognized the shared history, common struggles, and intertwined destinies of Hindus and Muslims in India. His admiration for their unity stemmed from his belief that a just and equitable society requires recognizing and respecting the dignity of all its communities. A practical leader or someone who wants division? While Dr. Ambedkar acknowledged the political skills and leadership of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the leader of the Muslim League, he also had deep reservations about Jinnah's strategy of using religious identity as a bargaining chip in the political arena. He believed that Jinnah's relentless pursuit of a separate Muslim state was a dangerous gamble. It had the potential to tear apart the very fabric of Indian society. Ambedkar considered Jinnah to be a shrewd strategist. Jinnah skillfully tapped into the anxieties and aspirations of the Muslim population in the face of an uncertain future. He argued that Jinnah's strategy, while politically astute, came at a heavy price. It inflamed communal tensions. It made it difficult for Hindus and Muslims to find common ground. Ambedkar believed that Jinnah's vision for Pakistan, presented as a solution to the Muslim question in India, was ultimately flawed and short-sighted. He argued that creating a separate nation based on religion would not magically erase the complex social, economic, and political challenges faced by both communities. It would only serve to harden divisions, create new conflicts, and exacerbate existing ones. The limits of religious politics. Dr. Ambedkar's criticism of Jinnah stemmed from his fundamental belief in nation-building based on shared citizenship and equal rights for all, regardless of their religious background. He saw Jinnah's religious politics as a dangerous deviation from this ideal. It threatened to divide India and trap it in a perpetual cycle of conflict. Dr. Ambedkar argued that true progress could only be achieved by addressing the root causes of social and economic inequality. He advocated for a society where opportunities were available to all, regardless of their caste or creed. He believed that focusing solely on religious identity as a basis for political mobilization would only serve to distract from the real issues plaguing India: poverty, illiteracy, and social discrimination. Dr. Ambedkar envisioned an India where Hindus and Muslims could coexist peacefully and work together to build a prosperous and just nation. He believed that Jinnah's vision of a separate Muslim state was a betrayal of this shared dream. It represented a retreat into the darkness of communalism. He urged both communities to reject the politics of division and embrace a future based on unity, equality, and justice. Dr. Ambedkar's vision for an undivided India. Dr. Ambedkar was firmly against the partition of India. He believed in a united and inclusive nation where Hindus and Muslims could live together peacefully and work together for the common good. His vision for India went beyond religious and communal divides. It was rooted in the principles of social justice, equality, and brotherhood. Dr. Ambedkar argued that India's strength lies in its diversity. He believed that the tapestry of cultures, languages, and religions, woven together over centuries, was a source of strength, not weakness. He envisioned an India where this diversity was celebrated, not feared, and where every citizen, regardless of their background, had an equal stake in the nation's future. His opposition to partition stemmed from a deep understanding of Indian history and society. He recognized that Hindus and Muslims had coexisted for centuries, sharing common cultural practices, languages, and traditions. He believed that the bonds forged through this shared history were far stronger than the forces that sought to divide them. Partition, a recipe for disaster. Dr. Ambedkar foresaw the disastrous consequences of dividing India based on religion. He predicted that the partition would lead to widespread violence, displacement, and suffering. His predictions sadly came true. The partition of India in 1947 witnessed one of the largest mass migrations in human history. Millions of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs were uprooted from their homes. They were forced to flee across newly drawn borders, often facing unimaginable violence and brutality along the way. The horrors of partition left an indelible mark on the collective psyche of India and Pakistan. Communal riots that engulfed both nations resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. The violence left deep wounds that continue to affect the relationship between the two countries even today. Dr. Ambedkar's warnings about the dangers of partition went unheeded at the time. However, his words serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of division and the importance of upholding unity and peace. The fallacy of the two-nation theory. Dr. Ambedkar strongly rejected the two-nation theory, the ideological foundation for the creation of Pakistan. This theory, championed by the Muslim League, stated that Hindus and Muslims were two distinct nations. They were incompatible in their beliefs and practices. Dr. Ambedkar argued that this theory was a gross oversimplification of the complex realities of Indian society. He pointed out that Hindus and Muslims in India shared not just a common history and geography, but also intertwined social and economic lives. He argued that reducing their identities to just their religious beliefs ignored the multifaceted nature of their existence. It disregarded the many commonalities that bound them together. Dr. Ambedkar believed that the two-nation theory was a dangerous and divisive proposition. It had the potential to tear apart the social fabric of India. He argued that true nationalism lay in recognizing and celebrating the shared heritage and destiny of all Indians, regardless of their religious faith. The caste system, a stain on Hinduism. Dr. Ambedkar was very clear in his condemnation of the caste system. He saw it as a deep form of social discrimination that plagued Hinduism. He argued that the caste system wasn't just a social hierarchy. It was a system of layered inequality, assigning inherent worth and social standing based on birth. He believed it went completely against the principles of equality and justice, which should be the foundation of any decent society. Born into the Dalit community, Dr. Ambedkar experienced the cruelty of the caste system firsthand. Throughout his life, he faced discrimination, insults, and exclusion. His personal experiences fueled his intellectual and political fight against this oppressive system. He dedicated his life to ending the caste system and achieving social justice for those on the margins of society. He argued that the caste system wasn't just a small part of Hinduism, it was deeply woven into its scriptures, customs, and social practices. He criticized Hindu texts that gave religious backing to the caste hierarchy. He argued that these interpretations were twisted to serve the interests of the privileged upper castes. Dr. Ambedkar's critique of the caste system wasn't just theoretical, it was rooted in the lived experiences of millions of Indians who suffered under its yoke. He believed that true progress for India was impossible without dismantling this system of layered inequality and establishing a society where every person is treated with dignity and respect. The dehumanizing impact of caste. Ambedkar carefully documented the dehumanizing impact of the caste system on Dalits, the community at the very bottom of the social ladder. He highlighted the social, economic, and political exclusion faced by Dalits, who were denied education, property rights, and even basic human dignity. He argued that the caste system wasn't just a system of social classes, but a form of social imprisonment, trapping generations in a cycle of poverty and oppression. He exposed the arbitrary and discriminatory nature of caste-based jobs, where Dalits were often relegated to menial and degrading tasks considered impure by the upper castes. This segregation extended to all aspects of life, from access to water sources and places of worship, to social interactions and marriage prospects. Ambedkar argued that the caste system created a society where human worth was measured not by individual merit or character, but by the accident of birth. He believed this was a fundamental violation of human rights and a grave injustice that couldn't be tolerated in a modern democratic society. He called for the complete abolition of the caste system, arguing that mere reforms or reservations wouldn't be enough to address the deep-seated prejudices and systemic inequalities it perpetuated. He believed that true liberation for Dalits and the creation of a just and equitable society required a fundamental restructuring of Indian society based on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Caste and the erosion of national unity. Beyond its inherent injustice, Ambedkar recognized the corrosive impact of the caste system on national unity. He argued that the caste system, with its emphasis on divisions and hierarchies, undermines the very idea of a shared Indian identity. He believed that a nation divided within itself, plagued by caste prejudices and discrimination, could never achieve true progress or realize its full potential. He pointed out that the caste system created a fragmented society where loyalty to one's caste often superseded loyalty to the nation. He argued that this division weakened India's social fabric and made it vulnerable to exploitation by outside forces. He believed that a united and strong India required transcending the narrow confines of caste and embracing a shared national identity based on the principles of equality and justice. Ambedkar's critique of the caste system was not merely a matter of social justice, it was also a matter of national importance. He believed that India could achieve true greatness only by abolishing the caste system and creating a society where all citizens were treated equally, regardless of their caste, creed, or religion. He envisioned an India where the accident of birth would no longer determine a person's worth or destiny, and where every citizen would have an equal opportunity to contribute to the nation's progress. Bridging the Divide, a call for Hindu-Muslim unity. Dr. Ambedkar's book, Pakistan or the Partition of India, is a powerful reminder of the dangers of communalism and the enduring need for Hindu-Muslim unity in India. It's a call to rise above those divisive forces that want to turn communities against each other and build a nation based on the principles of justice, equality, and brotherhood. Dr. Ambedkar's analysis of the factors leading to the partition underlines how fragile social harmony is when religious identity is manipulated for political gain. Remembering Dr. Ambedkar's great ideas, there are people today who are carrying forward his mission of unity and social justice. One such visionary, social reformer, author, filmmaker, and scholar is Nikhil Sablania. For the past 15 years, Nikhil has dedicated his life to social education, spreading Babasaheb's ideas and teaching Buddhism. He is tirelessly working to remove caste discrimination, eradicate religious prejudice, and solve the country's economic problems. Nikhil's hard work shows how relevant Dr. Ambedkar's vision remains today. Through grassroots and educational programs, He is trying to bring everyone together for a society where every person can progress, regardless of caste or religion. His work reminds us that the fight for justice and equality is not over yet. It is a call to duty for all of us to forget our prejudices and create a more equal India. As Ambedkar envisioned, the dream of a better society is being carried forward by people like Nikhil Sablania. Let's honor his work and continue to strive for the peaceful and inclusive India that Dr. Ambedkar dreamed of, an India where unity and humanity prevail. Contact Nikhil Sablania at 8527533051, 8851188170. Get his books at nspmart.com.